Mooching millennials getting their parents to pay their bills. According to Fortune, adults in their 20s to 30s are turning to mom and dad for financial assistance as adulting becomes too hard. David, 35% admit parents are paying their bills. Is this what happens when the everyone gets a trophy generation has to grow up into adulthood and actually, I don't know, be an adult?
Well, Gen Z is pissed at us boomers, and I can't say that I blame them. There was an article that came out the other day that said you would have to have 5 minimum wage jobs to live in Austin, Texas, to afford the rent there. It's ridiculous. So those of you who say, well, back in 1980, I made $15 an hour and I bought a house. Well, guess what? Adjusted for inflation, your $15 an hour that you made in 1980 would now be over $112,000 a year.
What's up, everybody? Major Retired Richard Ojeda here. And hey, all you bootstrap loving, work hard and you'll get somewhere type folks, listen up and listen good. It's the economy that's changed, and for the worse, not the work ethic of young people.
It's when the parents who believe in and promote this idea that everyone gets a trophy don't raise their children correctly with the right set of values.
You know, most young people I meet, they want to work. A lot of people say, oh, the new generation doesn't want to work and they're lazy. No, that's not true. They're smart. They're smarter than us. They just don't want your crappy $15 an hour job. Now, I'm not here to give any answers, but I'm just saying, I feel you, Gen Z. On the other hand, that one young kid who told me yesterday and commented that I shouldn't be on TikTok. Get off my lawn, you little fuck.
You hear this time and time again, that old saying about kids these days and how they just want a handout, and every new generation is just so lazy because of technology. Remember how a few decades ago it was violent video games that were going to make everyone crazy. The sad reality is that while we debunked that myth, wages have stayed at about the same as they were when that talking point made its rounds on television. Wages have barely increased in the last 2 decades, but prices have steadily climbed, even before the pandemic and the present-day inflation. And younger generations have been sounding the alarm for years now. Meanwhile, someone in their 60s on Fox News just calls them youthless and blames it on them going to college and not working a, quote, real job.
63% of Gen Z and millennials feel burnout. This one gets me really fired up because, hear me out on this. I got a job where I got to get up in the middle of the night. I have a long commute. I'm raising 2 kids. I sleep between 3 and 4 hours a night. What does a Gen Zer who's working a 9 to 5 have to be stressed out about? Avocado toast?
The federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour, people. Some meals at fast food places cost over $8. So think about that. Poor families are working multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet, but they aren't making the gaps. That's not laziness. That's an economy that doesn't work for the majority of Americans. Housing costs have exploded, and so has the rental market. Younger millennials have had a hard enough time trying to afford buying a home, and now it's even more out of reach for each younger generation, all while someone on Fox is still trying to sell you the American dream, but encouraging corporations to price the majority of people out of it. It's not enough that we've seen record profits from companies even during the pandemic and inflation. It's not enough that residential companies have made rent so unaffordable that people had to move out of their areas. It's not enough that multi-billion-dollar corporations get away with paying next to nothing in taxes, while the lowest paid Americans lose more money than they can keep. Nope, that just won't work for the people convinced that it's just something about these young kids and their work ethic and entitled nature. These talking points are bought and sold by corporations. They are put out there by media companies like Fox News, who know they have a base of 55 and up, and they use it to keep the Republican Party in power. And what does the GOP do with that? Nothing else that chomps at the bit to get to those tax cuts for corporations that will someday magically make the lives of low and middle class people better, except it never does, and wages don't go up. The cost of housing doesn't become more affordable, but hey, maybe you'll get a 25-cent raise this year. That will help out with those bills eventually, right? The more we allow the disinformation and the rhetoric that benefits the most well-off people to seep into the conversation, the more we have to push back and get our elected officials to listen to us.
You're doing just enough to get by, to pay your bills and have just enough left over because you don't want to do extra work. Let me tell you something. When I was growing up,
Yeah, this whole go the extra mile crap may have worked 30, 50 years ago, but nowadays most corporations don't give a shit about people who do that. Hi, my name is Ethan, and before I became big on TikTok, I worked at Chick-fil-A for 40 hours a week, every week for 2 years while I was getting my TV and film degree in college. And this is the bullshit that I endured while working there. When my boss hired me, he started me at $7.25 an hour. Sounds reasonable, right? Minimum wage, you work hard and you'll get a raise. Or at least that's what you think. In my time of working at Chick-fil-A, I attempted to attain the position of team leader multiple times. Now you're probably wondering, was I qualified? Well, let me tell you, I was one of the fastest order takers they had, whether it was in the lobby or in the drive-thru. I set multiple drive-thru records of how many cars we got at peak lunch hour. I also did most of the heavy lifting and manual labor as far as restocking goes, and I was one of the best with all the customers. As a cherry on top, I had 4 years of formal leadership training courses under my belt from high school and college. You could say I was more qualified than most people who were there to get the position of team leader. First time I applied for being a team leader, I was working there for 6 months. I applied, and I was denied. However, the 3 people they gave it to were there for 2 or 3 years before me. It's okay. Seniority, they deserved it. But I had been there for 6 months. I'd been working hard. I asked my boss for a raise. I got denied.
One of the key things that all these old people just don't seem to understand is that going the extra mile back in the day, those dollars actually added up. But now going the extra mile, you know, that extra 25 or 50 bucks that you might get, you know, that might get you a couple of packs of meat or a box of cereal at the grocery store, but it's not going to be anything significant to go into your savings. You know, so it's like, you know, back in my day, I used to put in an hour or two extra work. Like no one these days is familiar with that. Like no one works 2 or 3 jobs. Like people just stopped working hard all of a sudden. Even though the dollar doesn't go as far as it used to, somehow people aren't working as hard. No, actually people are working 2-3 times as hard just to make their basic necessities, just to get food, just to pay their bills. You know, all the debt that's going on in the country, but they never seem to think about these things. Why? Because, well, then that would mean that they aren't better than us.
The second time I applied to be a team leader, I had been working there for a year at this point. I asked my boss, hey, I'd like to apply for a team leader position. And he said, there's no team leader positions open at this time, unfortunately. Ask again later. Then I asked him again for a raise. Once again, I was denied. I'm still making only $7.25 an hour at this point. Skip ahead 2 months after that day. I come into work the next morning. A girl who had been working there for 4 months is wearing a team leader shirt. This girl was less qualified than I was and was nowhere near as productive of a worker as I was. Literally the ultimate slap in the face. Once again, I had asked for a raise. My boss denied me a raise. I am still only making $7.25 an hour at this point, and I am busting my ass more than 95% of the people who are working in this restaurant.
I've had many jobs in my life, a whole lot in sales, and, you know, a lot of sales jobs are commission, and they're very hard. You know, you on the floor, whatever department store you might be working in for literally, you know, going through 10, 12-hour shifts where you just working that whole day. And then the sales manager or the boss or whatever, they'll text everybody and they'll be like, go the extra mile, an extra hour. And it's like, come on, guys, let's do it. But you're not getting a baseline pay. You're not getting paid by the hour. You're only getting paid based off of how many TVs you sell or how many, you know, cable packages you sell or whatever it is that you're going off of. And ultimately, yeah, that may get you a little bit more money, but the sales managers and everybody else in the pyramid, they're the ones who are really making it. So while you're going the extra mile, you're just making the company more money. And you're not, you know, like, okay, I'll go the extra mile. What if I don't sell anything extra because there's nobody in the department store? Well, you just worked an extra hour for no extra pay. You know, so it's like, what are we even talking about right now?
Skip forward to the 2-year mark. At this point, I am at my breaking point. I wandered into the office one day, and the person who was working payroll left the payroll software up on the computer, and what I found made me pissed. I was one of the fastest order takers there, one of the most efficient people working there, one of the best with the customers, and one of the people who did the most physical labor to restock and keep that restaurant going. And I found out that I was the 3rd lowest paid employee out of 25 to 30 crew members. There were people there working a shorter amount of time, doing less work than I was, that were making amounts of up to 3 to 5 more an hour than I was making. After doing nothing but busting my ass to get the raise and promotion from my boss that I rightfully deserved.
I want you to like put yourself in a world where like if it was truly the cause and the case that we're all broke because we're just eating too much toast and going to Starbucks too much. Imagine what that world would really be like. Like you'd walk in people's houses and there would just be an avalanche of venti-sized, you know what I'm saying, Starbucks cups falling all over. Like how much toast do these people think we're eating? They don't think other food groups count. You know, they don't think that we eat beef and chicken and pork and grain and stuff like that. No, it's just avocado toast. That's all it is. You know what I mean? And again, I point this out often. A lot of the people who say that younger generations just don't want to work hard, those are the same people who fought tooth and nail to keep segregation alive. Those are a lot of the same people who, you know, when little black girls were integrating schools, they were like, no, God damn it. No, those people are not more intelligent than us. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry.